Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ironworker Gaming channel. I am Ironworker814, and today we're kind of stepping into uncharted waters here. While this is still a Destiny 2 viewer-requested weapon review, this is going to be my first crack at a more holistic look at a weapon, where I'll be analyzing the weapon across all three of the game's core activities, rather than solely focusing on the Crucible. This weapon review was requested by Serendipity, and the weapon we're going to be analyzing today is the Deathbringer Exotic Rocket Launcher. And I'm gonna need your help on this one though. Definitely still do the like and subscribe thing if you enjoy the video, but please leave me some feedback regarding the testing, the formatting, and any aspects that you may have liked or didn't like, or think I could have improved upon for the next video. And full disclosure here, I decided to go this route when I realized that I would probably die of old age before I was able to capture enough footage to do a Crucible only review on the Deathbringer. Heavy ammo in the Crucible can be scarce at times, and with rocket launchers only pulling one shot, it was going to take forever. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at the Deathbringer stats, then head to the tribute hall and get a sense of the weapon's function and check some damage numbers, before summarizing its performance in strikes and public events, Crucible, and Gambit. But of course, we're going to do that right after we take a brief look at how to obtain this weapon for those who have not done so already. Deathbringer was introduced into Destiny 2 with the Shadowkeep expansion, so to obtain it, you must have purchased this content and have completed the main campaign. Then talk to Eris and complete her Lunar Spelunker weekly bounty, which requires you to run through 3 lost sectors. Once completed, you'll get a Firewall data fragment, which you will take to a 4th lost sector, which is K1 Revelations in Sorrow's Harbor. Open the door at the end of the lost sector with your data fragment and you will receive the memory of Saimoda. Once you obtain this memory, it's going to ask you to get some arc ability kills and kill some nightmares before returning to Eris in Sanctuary through the portal. Speaking to Eris and opening the chest near her will grant you access to the Symphony of Death quest in the Hellmouth. This is a multi-step quest whose requirements are pretty straightforward. So in the interest of time, I am not going to walk you through each and every quest step, but Marcus B Gaming and Needless Space both have great videos out that quickly and efficiently explain each step. I will link those videos in the description below. But now let's take a look at Deathbringer's stats and damage numbers. Deathbringer is an exotic void rocket launcher shooting at 15 rounds per minute and chambering 1 rocket at a time. Looking at the stats here, we have an extremely high blast radius, a relatively slower velocity, but a pretty decent handling stat. And Deathbringer fires very differently than other rocket launchers. This is highlighted in the intrinsic trait, Dark Deliverance. Fires remotely detonated projectiles that drop void orbs on combatants. So press and hold your fire button to shoot the projectile and then release it when you are ready to detonate. The exotic perk is Dark Descent, stating the further that void orbs fall, the more powerful the detonations become. Keep in mind that it is not necessarily the drop distance of these void orbs that is measured to calculate the damage increase, rather the time spent in the air. So let's take a look at the damage numbers, and we'll be using this Major Ogre in the Tribute Hall for testing. If the initial projectile directly impacts the target, the 7 Seeker Orbs will detonate, doing roughly 31,700 points of damage. That is provided that none of the Seeker Orbs sneak off course, which can potentially happen. When detonating just above the Ogre's head, these 7 Seeker Orbs do get a little extra airtime, and they average out to about 8,550 points of damage apiece, or just under a total of 60,000 points of damage. And the more airtime these projectiles have, the more damage they're going to do. I did see a few funky damage ticks come off of this Ogre, something at like 13,000 or 16,000, but it would seem that the actual max damage that these Seeker Orbs want to do is consistently coming in at 12,716, which when multiplied by 7 gives you a total of roughly 89,000 points of potential damage from a single rocket. A few things to consider here though, these orbs will self-detonate after 6 seconds in the air or if they contact a hard surface. Plus, the tracking on these orbs are random, so if there are multiple targets in the area, you can't actually control which one these orbs lock onto. Also, the orbs do need to fall near a target for the tracking to kick in, so shooting it too high in the air could potentially increase the spread of the orbs, resulting in missed damage. And real quick here, I just want to put these damage numbers in perspective. When using Whisper of the Worm, we can down this Ogre in just over 5 seconds. If we are using Xenophage against it, we can down it in just over 4 seconds. And then Deathbringer, from the time the initial shot leaves the launcher, it takes roughly 11 seconds to down this Ogre. But what Deathbringer does lack in DPS, it does compensate for with some utility. So we'll first take a look at how Deathbringer performs in strikes and public events. Alright, I feel like strikes, public events, and any other baseline PvE activity in Destiny 2 is really where you're gonna see the biggest results from Deathbringer, since this is a weapon that can do a lot of things well, but really doesn't excel in a specific area. It does handle itself pretty well for ad clearing due to the tracking and explosive nature of the Void Orbs. Also, Deathbringer does quickly dispose of any of your less tanky major targets that may be sprinkled in with a mob of ads. Mini bosses will require a few shots to down them, but here again, you're getting rid of any annoying trash ads that happen to be in the area at the same time. The same principle applies when dealing with the main bosses of the activity. Deathbringer does output a good bit of burst damage to a single target, but the Void Orbs can also peel off and take care of any ads in the area here also. And since we are talking about strikes and public events, missing out on a little bit of boss damage is not the end of the world, and cleaning up the area can be helpful in a lot of cases. A few other added benefits are that since our goal is not to directly impact a target, this can be used safely and effectively from behind cover. Also, since we are lobbing these shots into the air, we have the option to swap to a different weapon and deal some additional damage while the Void Orbs are falling on their targets. And with that out of the way, let's head over to Gambit and see how Deathbringer does in there. In Gambit, while Deathbringer is still useful, we do start to see some issues creep in. It is still quite effective when targeting mobs of ads, majors, blockers, or even high value targets. And for the most part, it can be a pretty solid invading weapon if you can catch your opponents piled up on the bank trying to clear it out. But its effectiveness really diminishes if the enemy team scatters when you invade. Also, once the element of surprise has expired and the other team knows that you are the Deathbringer guy, they're probably going to make a conscious effort to keep spread out, provided that they collectively have more than 2 brain cells rattling around in their heads. Also, its usefulness in the boss phase is pretty situational. It definitely does a nice job of clearing the initial ads and the void shielded primeval envoys that spawn at the beginning of the standard Gambit boss phase. But when it's time to pour damage onto the boss, Deathbringer shows some weakness, especially if the area is still littered with ads. Because when it's time to melt the boss, you need to dump your damage on it as quickly as possible. And in this situation, you cannot afford to have those orbs locking onto any trash ads. Winning or losing a round can hinge on the damage from your heavy weapon, and this manner of damage inconsistency is definitely something that needs to be taken into account. Alright, for the Crucible, and in my opinion, the best place to find success with Deathbringer is going to be in your 6v6 game modes, especially when it can be used on capture zones or heavily trafficked pinch points on the map. Simply because this is where enemies tend to group up and you can take advantage of the weapon's multi-kill potential. Taking a look at the damage numbers here real quick, even on a direct impact with no airtime on the Void Orbs, you will output 224 points of damage apiece, which is definitely enough to down any enemy guardian outright. But what we really want to do is launch our shots skyward, where the Void Orbs can build up to 330 points of damage apiece. On a direct hit, Deathbringer still is capable of downing a guardian in their super, and when shot into the air, regardless of the hang time, 2 orbs will be required to down a super. But the element of surprise is Deathbringer's biggest strength in PvP. The ability to down enemy guardians who are behind cover is very useful. And I mean, you can even down enemies who are behind cover while you are behind cover. And these projectiles are pretty quiet as they're rolling in, kind of like a stealth bomber. And once the detonation actually occurs, it's usually too late for anyone who didn't see it coming. There are a few drawbacks though. 1, the Seeker Orbs can be outrun, and really only perform well if you can catch your opponents flat-footed. And 2, is this really how you want to spend your exotic slot? Think about how many times in a match you actually pull heavy ammo, and then consider the fact that with Deathbringer and other rocket launchers, you are only getting 1 shot per brick. I'd feel more comfortable making this case for Wardcliff Coil, since getting 1 shot in your rocket launcher is pretty much going to guarantee you 1 kill. I don't think the same could be said about Deathbringer. And if you have a preferred exotic weapon that is a primary or a special, I'm not really sure if setting it aside to equip Deathbringer is really a good trade-off. But that's not my call to make, that is completely up to you. So, in summary, Deathbringer is a weapon that is unique, can be effective in the right situations, and in my opinion, is pretty enjoyable to use. Once you get a feel for how high to shoot your rockets, and gain a sense for when to properly detonate them, Deathbringer feels like a pretty solid weapon. But keep in mind, as I said earlier, This is a weapon that can do a lot of things well, but does not really excel in any one area, and you definitely are trading off damage for utility. But if that's a compromise that you're willing to make, then give Deathbringer a try. I'm sure that the more in tune you become with its functionality, the more you will start to enjoy it. So if you found this video useful, helpful, or enjoyable in any way, please remember to leave it a like. And to see more videos similar to this one, consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel if you have not done so already. You can look for Ironworker814 on Twitch or Twitter and drop me a follow if you're interested in doing so. But the best way to contact me is simply to comment down below. And like I said earlier, feedback on this video would be greatly appreciated. And with all that being said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out this weapon review. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.